And yeah, as I said, I kind of want the best of all worlds effectively, where the game is still readable, but yet you feel like you increased in power a lot. And then you get to the end and you feel like, I'm totally broken. My character's insane. Like I can just clear stuff amazingly, while also not getting to the point where like someone else sees that gameplay and thinks this game looks stupid. I could never play it.
Hello, Exiles, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have some new news for Path of Exile 2, which came out of the interview between Jessirocks, Tharid and Jonathan from GGG. Now, during this interview, we gathered some important information about the up-and-coming game, and let's run through it. Okay, so firstly, let's talk about microtransactions. This came up in the interview. In Path of Exile 2, there will be no changes to the monetization model, and Jonathan's made that extremely clear. The same microtransaction systems that were in Path of Exile 1 will be available in Path of Exile 2. Now, we all knew that, but here are some exceptions that came out of the interview. Stashes, such as delve stashes, which were discussed specifically, will only carry over if the mechanic is present in Path of Exile 2. If they're not present, they'll be marked as inactive, so you won't be able to access them in PoE 2, but they may become available down the track, and they'll be adjusted for the Path of Exile 2 style of the mechanic. Some things such as skill MTXs may also not carry over if the skill's been perversely changed versus what it was in Path of Exile 1. Now, hideouts will make a return in Path of Exile 2, and all purchased hideouts will carry over into PoE 2. They didn't ask the question of whether or not your personalized hideouts would carry over, but possibly this could be an option as well, though it's probably unlikely considering it is a new game. But it also does mean that the template system that was put in place for PoE 1 with hideouts is probably and most likely going to be available in Path of Exile 2. Okay, so moving on to gold and trading. Now, respecking will now be done with gold instead of regret orbs. Gold will also be character bound moving forwards and will not be tradable between players. There'll also be limits on gold trading to prevent exploitation, so they may put a limit to the number of trades that you may do in one sequence or in a period of time or in an instance. Currency trading will also have a bulk selling function, which we did know about, but the way that this will look, according to Jonathan, will be very similar to like a currency trading market. So think of like a share trading market house or something like that. Very similar in nature and look, apparently. The biggest improvement here, though, is consoles will see improvements in ease of trading, and what they meant by that is they specifically dug into the fact that players on consoles will now be able to log into the website, or will be able to log into the website, and will be able to interact with their account through the website moving forward, so they can trade from their phone while they're sitting on the couch. This is in particular really good considering there's a big focus on console and couch co-op moving forwards in the game. Now, as far as vendors in Path of Exile 2, Jonathan specifically referred to this as a catch-up mechanic, and what he meant by this is vendors will be a lot more meaningful moving forwards, essentially alluding to the fact that you'll be able to buy gear to fix your build if you're struggling or falling behind. And this is very similar to what Diablo 1 and 2 originally did, where you could go to the vendor and specifically get gear to be able to prop your character up to get into the next area. There's definitely a major problem in Path of Exile 1 if your build is struggling to keep up. Now, there will be gambling in the game, or better known as gamba mechanics. And essentially anything from the standard monster loot drop tables will be available and up for grabs, with the exception of boss specific uniques, which will not drop from gamba mechanics. Now, as far as some skill changes in Path of Exile 2, what I picked up in the interview is that corpse summoning skills will be removed or will not make their way into the game from Path of Exile 1, leading to uncertainty around skills such as Desecrate, and things like Detonate Dead and Cremation may be affected by this as well, though we'll see what these look like when we get to Path of Exile 2. Also, as far as minion goes, there's a larger focus on temp minions assisting with clear moving forwards and perma minions being more boss facing. And the reason for this is essentially they want temp minions to be able to take bulk amounts of enemies, and they want your minions that you take to bosses to be a lot more meaningful when you're going into fights. Another comment that Jonathan also mentioned was that they took the same idea from Diablo 2, funnily enough, around the fact that bosses can do more damage to your minions moving forwards, and then your minions take less damage when they're versing ads or white packs out in maps and things like that. And so it appears that they're applying that mechanic in this circumstance as well. Now, on the topic of defenses, which is my favorite topic because I like tanks, attributes and defenses have been revamped for a better gameplay experience. Previously, they had actually decided to take the life nodes out of the skill tree, and then based on further playtesting, found that armor builds really struggled against elemental skills, whereas evasion and energy shield characters didn't really have many problems with that. So essentially what they've done is allowed for strength to add additional health or increase the amount of health that your armor-based characters accumulate, which essentially eliminates that problem moving forwards. Now, as far as game pacing goes, and this is probably one of the biggest focus items that everybody's concerned about, Jonathan addressed a few points on this.
So I think when people hear that, sometimes they assume that we want to go all the way to like complete just like I mean, okay, so there was like that game No Rest for the Wicked that came out recently, and that game is like very, much slower
Yes.
paced, right? And I think people worry that that's like kind of what we're talking about here, that like that's experience. Like it isn't that. It is still very much like a game where you can scale to crazy degrees, but like the degree to which you scale isn't going to be, to the point where you literally cannot tell what's going on.
Examples of how this is being tackled specifically, which were raised in the interview, were around instead of having to stand still while casting, you can now actively move and cast at the same time, which also sort of aids in the fact that they've put twin stick movements for console play. Jonathan also went on to say that you probably still could get your attack speed to go to absolutely stupid levels, but at the expense of damage. He also noted that critical strike is not going to be for every build, and we all know that in Path of Exile 1, crit builds be strong. Another comment that Jonathan also made in the interview is that the game will be focused around being more accessible to newer players without compromising in complexity for those older players. The way that this is sort of being done is around more guidance being provided to players around compatible support gems, and also the game actually outlining the best options in the game for the use of support gems. And from what I heard in the interview, he was simply saying that there's going to be, for every single skill, there's going to be 9 ideal support gems and at least 5 that would be optimal for any particular setup or configuration. And they're going to very clearly outline that to the player as well. He did also mention beyond that, though, there will be combinations that will be found by players as they natively progress through the game or apply different mechanics and experiment, and this will also be something that will be found out over time from just general interaction and play. Another couple of things that came out of the interview was that hardcore and solo self-found will make their way back into PoE 2. That was pretty much inevitable. Those were like 2 of the playstyles that the developers love, and they built the original game as a core foundation of. And so, yeah, they're going to be there. Campaign bosses will take the form of map bosses, and this is basically the same approach they took in Path of Exile 1 in the end game, so that's not going anywhere. And unfortunately, you will not be able to wield a sword and a wand at the same time. Their comments were, it's just weird, and yeah, that's why weapon switching exists. So pretty much overall from the interview, it looks like the game's going to be really good. And every time we get one of these interviews, we learn just a little bit more about PoE 2. And you know what? It's really exciting. I think their approach to new player interaction is good. I think they've recognized that PoE 1 wasn't the most new player friendly game, and so they're making strides to remediate that. The other big thing is that I know a lot of the player base has been concerned about the fact that the game looks slow, but from what they said in the interview as well, there are elements in the interview where they alluded to the fact that by design, they've simply been limiting some of the things or adjusting some of the content that you can see, so you get a bit of a picture for the read of the game. But when you have a look at a lot of the builds that they do show, they're like 1 to 2 socket configurations at like level 30 and whatnot. So I don't think we've seen anything close to what we can expect in the end game. And until we actually see end game, I think it's just the point of we just reserve our judgment until that point in time and just take it for what it is. Anyway, thanks for watching my video, and if you like this sort of content, don't forget to like and sub to the channel. There's also a Twitch that I'm streaming on. I'm doing a hardcore SSF run at the moment since it's the end of league. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys later.